The Q&A is open. I already have a question. Oh, it was Gretchen. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. So I think this is already our third or fourth parent hour for the semester. So tonight we thought it would be a good idea, and I saw a lot of very cold students with their coats on coming through today to talk about how to stay connected as the seasons change. So it's been pretty easy. We've been really blessed with great weather for weekends and evenings, and being able to get together and see friends outside safely. But as the weather changes, we thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about the things we have been doing, but also the things that we can look forward to over the next few weeks as we get into the colder weather, and how to take care of ourselves and make sure that we stay engaged and not isolate ourselves entirely. So I'm joined by panelists tonight from the Counseling and Psychological Services, from Residential Life, and also from our Office of Student Engagement and Inclusion. So I will go ahead, and we're going to start with, so I did like a sandwich, and I'll let you all introduce yourselves, but I figured we'd start with some fun stuff with Res Life, and then we would talk about the Counseling and Psychological Services in the middle, and then end with some fun stuff of student engagement. So without further ado, Jill, do you want to take it away?
Certainly. So thank you so much for taking some time to be a part of this session tonight. And my name is Jill Engel-Hellman, she, her, hers, and I am the Director of Residential Life. And I'm joined by two of our wonderful resident advisors. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Cool. Hello, my name is Gretchen Dodge. I use she, her pronouns. I am an RA in the A neighborhood, which is one of our freshman neighborhoods here on campus. I'm in the class of 2023, so this is my sophomore year. And I'm here with getting a music education degree with a vocal emphasis.
Dana, for some reason, I don't know that we can hear you.
Dana, you might have to log out and come back in and make sure that you connect to media. It's okay, we've all been there.
I think it would get easier. I feel like I just get more frustrated with technology.
Oh. Can I go to the next slide, Jill?
Absolutely, and then I'll let Dana introduce herself when she gets back.
Great.
So just that there are lots of different things going on campus. I like to say there's, kind of different areas. We have things that RAs plan in their building or individually, and then area-wide activities based on kind of their team. Also, we do things, I would say, Res Life-wide for some bigger activities. And then in addition to that, RHA, or the Residence Hall Association, does a lot of programming on campus. And then we partner a lot with the Office of Student Engagement and Inclusion. In general, I'm not sure that students notice the difference between and like who's hosting. They just know that there's something really fun going on. So Gretchen, can you talk a little bit about just some examples of programs that you've been involved with?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the things that we've been doing, especially on the freshman side of campus, we're just trying to make sure that students are getting out. You guys are having a good time. That we can encourage you to still meet and to spend time and socialize with people, preferably outside, that we are starting to adapt, and we have some plans in the works from some indoor programs, as we transition to a colder season, and for next semester as well. Some of the things we've done this semester, we did some tie-dye face masks. We've done game days where we have, cornhole, we have some disc games out. We just encourage students to come out and meet with their RAs, to meet with each other, and just get outside and make sure they're having a good time. Something that has been a huge draw, at least for my residents and in my areas, is we love the food trucks. So for parents who don't know, there have been food trucks every Friday and Saturday on campus. If your students aren't raving about them, they should be. They're phenomenal. We have different trucks come in. We've had taco trucks. We've had pizza. We've had ice cream sandwiches. So every once in a while, I'll get a message from a resident wondering, "Oh, do you happen to know what tonight's food is?" To which I usually say, I have no idea. Your guess is as good as mine. And we have the line that stretches out all the way through the complexes. Socially distanced, everyone's wearing their mask and being responsible because they know they want a chance at that good food. So that's been a lot of fun. We've had movies out on the lawn. We've had that socially distanced and spaced out. And a lot of residents have really seemed to enjoy that. We've enjoyed that. And just those are some of the things that I've seen. I've really enjoyed participating in them and getting to know students a lot more. And it's a good way for us all to be able to be outside and enjoying each other's company.
So Jessica or Jess, can you please let Dana in? She's trying to move if it's working or not. Again, technology at its best.
There we go.
There we go. Can we hear you? Oh no. Dana, it is not working still, which is strange because we were just on. So you want to try through your phone maybe? Okay, so we're going to keep going. So Jess, can you please move us to the next slide? Gretchen?
Yeah, so one of the programs that we did, we've got some pictures for a couple of the ones that we've been able to do this year. This is a program that was put on by the staffs of Hawk Hall as well as the E neighborhood. So what these programs do is they're put on by the individual RA staffs, but that doesn't mean that they're limited to just the residents in that area. We try to make sure it's open up. We encourage other people. We say, hey, this is the time. You've got friends from A complex. Text them, let them know we're doing something fun. Come on out. We want you guys to socialize and spend time together. We call, I encourage them. I'm like, if you've got a mentor or you've got some friends from one of your gen ed classes that's a junior, text them, say, hey, come on over. We want to do something fun. So these are the kinds of programs that we encourage you to do. It is put on by the individual staffs, but that doesn't mean it's limited. This one was just a de-stress one. They were potting little plants, doing some socially distanced yoga. We just try to make sure everyone's still wearing their masks, still being really respectful of our COVID policies. We want to encourage people that there are still so many things that we can be doing.
Next slide, please. So this was going to be Dana's, and I'm not sure that she's back yet unless you happen to see her, Jess. All right, so this was a movie night on the village lawn, and if you can see, they spread out blankets that were socially distant, and you got to keep the blanket after you were done, which was a great way to go. Dana, can we actually hear you?
Able to hear me now?
Yay!
Perfect.
Okay. So Dana, do you want to finish this one?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Dana. For this movie night, basically it was they just had it super spread out, and we were able to be distant and watch a movie, and everyone was able to keep the blankets after, so that way it was like super clean. And yeah, I think we basically hit everything, but it was a really fun event.
Next slide.
Okay, so for bingo, this is one of my personal favorite things that we do at our school. The prizes for bingo are so awesome. They literally give out like AirPods, TVs, like they do like crazy prizes. And I think that it's just as fun when you do the live. It works the same way. And I think this is a big event that everyone loves, and there's a lot of incentives with it.
So one of the other things that we've been kind of testing out and something new this year that we've never attempted But one really smoothly, we think, is one of these video game nights. So we were able to get a vendor who's had some experience with setting up, lots of video games, lots of spaces, knew how to make sure that things were staying clean, that people were spaced out. And so we had this video game night. Anyone could come. They were wiping controllers in between, making sure everyone still was being safe and respectful. But again, it's something to do. Obviously, we were doing it at night. So this is a program that doesn't depend on whether, a little bit on weather. We would hope it didn't rain, and thankfully it didn't. But it didn't really matter what time of day. We were able to make sure that students were getting outside and having fun and getting together. There's a lot of residents here, myself included, who really enjoy different video games. And so it's really cool to be able to find someone on campus that you wouldn't normally connect with, and be able to play with them even in this situation. One of the other new things, so we've got a lot of new things this year. It's been pretty cool. One of the other new things that RHA was able to sponsor is a Howie Hunt. So for those who don't know, Howie the Hawk is our mascot for University of Hartford. Instead of doing, a little plush animal of Howie the Hawk, for this program, we actually did a moose. They've been doing a couple different programs with different animals. I think we did a bat one for Halloween. I'm not quite sure. That's what I heard for rumors. But they hide these little plushies all over campus, on the residential side, to encourage students to be going out. Check out the spaces that are available in your residential community. If you bring the little plushie back to the RHA office, you get you get a prize. So it's another prize, like the good level prizes like you would get for bingo. But it's just a little scavenger hunt. Again, all outside, just trying to make sure people are getting out.
Okay, so just to introduce myself, I am a upperclassman RA in Regents Park, and I am going to graduate next year, but I am a part of the class of 2023, and I am a criminal justice major with a Spanish and sociology minor. So where do programs happen and students connect? So we have a lot of spaces, both indoor and outside. Outside, most of them happen in Alumni Plaza or the Village Lawn and all of the other places you see listed. Alumni Plaza is like where our big H is, and you have to pass by if you're going by the dining hall or to the academic side of campus. So a lot of times you see those programs. And then for indoor, we have them in Conover, which is like our store, like our grocery store, and where Subway is, and then other lounges in the neighborhoods.
So just, a quick, as we talk about support and people that are here to interact with students, we have professional staff in our central office. We also have resident directors, 6 this year. And, a lot of their job is to really check in and build relationships with students, certainly RAs, but then individual students as well. All of us do this work because we really enjoy the ability to have those relationships. And then a big part of being an RD is also to help guide RAs. So as they're working with situations, maybe things that are a little more challenging or students that are struggling a bit more, they're going to, coach RAs so that they can offer the best support to students. RDs will also do wellness checks. So if there's something that's a little bit more formal that somebody has said, hey, I think somebody should go check in on with the student, RDs will do that. Sometimes RAs as well. And then the RD really works with their team of RAs to organize programs and events that are going to meet the needs of students. And Gretchen, or no, excuse me, Dana.
Yeah. And so for RAs, our job is to really have a more hands-on contact with other residential students. We have individual conversations with them. Sometimes I like to go door to door and just talk to my residents, ask them how they're doing. Sometimes I give them a silly question like, what would you do with $1 million? Just like things like to keep in contact with them. It does get lonely being like in this new COVID world, but we do a lot of like we have community meetings every single month to make sure our residents are updated and we're in contact with them. or I'll have residents who email me and I'll go and sit down with them and just let them talk to me and vent about what's been going on. So we do a lot of things like that. And we also have the virtual and in-person option. So depending on how the student feels comfortable, sometimes I'll sit outside and meet in person with residents, and then other times I'll do a virtual online meeting.
So, just to encourage everyone to stay connected, to make sure if you have additional questions after this that you need answered or would like to have answered, or if you're having an issue, you just want to reach out on behalf, you've got questions for yourself, reach out on behalf of your student. Or you just want to follow along and see what the RAs are doing with your students. You just want to see what's going on. You can find us on Instagram at uheartreslife. You can also email our University of Hartford email, which is reslife@hartford.edu. Our phone number is also listed. This is just really good information to have. We pass it on to our residents. We like to follow you, Heart Res Life. It's fun to see what the other RAs are doing because we don't often get to see each other. It's a good way for us to encourage each other, and we love the encouragement and support that we get from you guys. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Just a reminder to families, if you have any questions, go ahead and put it in the chat or in the Q&A. I should have mentioned that in the beginning. So as I think all these were really, really great. And the one night that I was on campus and it was a food truck night, but there was also the roller skating and like there was a lot going on. And I was thinking like, wow, when I was in college for me, sure didn't look like this. So I know you guys are doing a lot of programming and that's great. So what would your advice be, I guess, Gretchen, Dana, for, families that are hearing, my son or daughter is, lonely or having trouble connecting. There's nothing to do on campus. We hear that a lot, even though there's a lot going on. What would you recommend?
I would recommend just having them get in contact with the RA. A lot of times, like you don't know, especially first year students, you don't know what's going on unless you're actively looking for it or you're following our pages. So if they just get in contact with the RA, we can show them that there's a lot to do. And if they're feeling lonely, then also reach out to CAPS or the RA, and they will definitely meet with them and try and get them connected to make friends in a safe and healthy way.
Absolutely. And off of that, the great thing about, especially in freshman complexes, freshman living arrangements, your RAs are in contact with your students. Literally, we see your students almost every day. If not every day, then we're seeing them every other day as we head off to classes, as we're checking in on them. We also tend to go door to door and knock and say, hi, we're just here. How you doing? Cool. What's up with classes? How's everything happening? So please, if you're hearing something from your student and you're kind of concerned, encourage them to reach out. We can see a lot, but any extra help that we can get, like, hey, I'm struggling in a class. There are tutoring services available on campus. If your student needs it, doesn't matter how late in the semester, we can point them in the right direction. We're here to help, and we do have a lot of contact with your students. Sometimes we miss things, so any help we can get by you telling them to reach out to us, and we'll reach out to them. And we're really thankful to have that contact with your students and get to know them better.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm sure some other questions will come up throughout the presentation, but thanks for Dana. Glad you were able to join us. I know that's the worst feeling, so you did great. Thank you. So transitioning, my question was about, feeling like, oh, there's not much going on. I'm a little lonely. We're certainly in a unique, transitioning to college is hard, no matter what the year is. And this year we're certainly facing a new set of challenges. So Dr. Berta, would you like to tell us about counseling and some things that you're seeing and ways to help?
Sure. Yes. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting CAPS to this presentation, even though I'm sandwiched in between. You want to end on the high note of counseling and psychological services, but we are really an integral and important part of the university, particularly for those students who feel like they might be struggling a bit more than the average person and might feel like they're declining and could use some professional support. Unlike some of the residential services in other departments, one of the key pieces for CAPS is that the students reach out to us and to take that first step if they're looking to get some professional support. And right now in our world of COVID, we have a system in place to make it really easy. Students can just call the counseling center or email me or our office manager, and we get them in for an initial screening, which is just basically to get a sense of what's going on and how we could be helpful. And then we usually end up making some recommendations for getting some supports through our department or through our office. We've been big on groups lately, and part of the reasoning for that is to help, fight off some of that loneliness and disconnection that people are feeling. Even though the groups are all virtual, and in fact, all of our supports are virtual this semester and will likely be for next semester, students just really seem to benefit from looking around the room and sharing their experiences and realizing that they're not the only ones going through a particularly tough time. And so right now we have a mindfulness meditation group. We have wellness workshops in place, which are basically groups that kind of focus in and tackle on the basics of mental health self-care, the importance of sleeping well and eating well and getting some exercise. We have a men's group, stress and anxiety group, and process groups, which means are more on the end of group therapy, where people can just share what's ever on their mind, and it's facilitated by myself or another staff member. We have a bit of a tongue-in-cheek topical group called Life is Hard, which covers the range of difficulties that students might be experiencing. We tackle issues of COVID, some of the political and racial unrest that's going on in our society, in our communities, the academic piece, which can be difficult for some students to do online. And so it's really a hodgepodge for students who are feeling overwhelmed. We have groups set in place for after the election to help students and support them, whatever they might be going through on an emotional end. We have a Students of Color support group that is happening in the evenings on Wednesday evenings. We do a lot of therapy, I guess, is our bread and butter of what we offer at CAPS. But we also offer case management supports for students who might be looking for longer term treatment or therapy off campus. We can help those students get connected so that they can really succeed and thrive throughout the years that they're here at UHeart. We interact with many departments, Res Life being on the top of the list, to essentially try to train up the RAs and the RDs to support students in distress, and to give them some tips and strategies for how to respond to a student if they're really having a hard time. We do outreach with faculty and staff. We interact with our public safety department. And just real quickly, our services are free in that they're covered under your tuition payments as long as you're a full-time undergrad. And there's a nominal fee for students who are part-time or graduate students. And our services are confidential like any other therapist. And so in times of as the winter approaches and students might be feeling more isolated or have a lot of things on their mind, for some, it's really nice to have a place where they can talk about whatever they need to without the risk of any of that information going anywhere, within limits, of course. Jess, do you want to hit the next one, please? So maybe not surprising to people listening today that anxiety is really the #1 presenting concern that we see students struggling with when they come into CAPS. As we might know from our own personal experiences or people that we know, it can really manifest in a lot of different ways. And so CAPS could be a really great resource for students who are having trouble sleeping, if it feels as though their anxiety is interfering with their academics or their ability to make social connections. Some students might cope with anxiety in ways that end up usually not being so healthy and productive, like substance use. And so these are all topics that we work with at the counseling center. When I think about anxiety, generally speaking, I think that it's something that it's an emotion that we get triggered, and it can manifest physically, and it feels uncomfortable and terrible. And so we usually find ways to avoid, approaching the things that we fear. And so a lot of the work that we do behind the scenes here is encouraging students to really step outside of their comfort zones and face some of the stuff that they might be avoiding. And that could be including, asking a friend to play a game or watch a movie, striking up a conversation with someone that you feel like you could connect with, but you might have some fears around. And so these are some of the topics that we work with, and we certainly will be as the winter closes in. Depression tends to be a concern, for some students who come to CAPS, just really kind of feeling down and out, low energy. The winter could weigh heavy here in New England, and I think when you had this added level of COVID, that could also weigh on some students. And so we really try to work with the students to to accept that this is where they're at, and to try to shift some of that energy to do something different. To maybe get moving, to maybe develop some of those social relationships that have been dwindling, to maybe try a new club, to maybe engage in some of these activities that Res Life talked about, and to really keep an eye on isolation and withdrawal. Generally speaking, when students are isolating and withdrawing too much, it's kind of like a red flag or a sign that we need to rally people to give them some support. There are introverts out there and people that like being alone, and that's just fine. But I would say, generally speaking, if there's too much withdrawing going on, we try to nip that in the bud and rally people around the student to give them some support. In the next slide, Jess. So loneliness, I do a little bit of work with my students around learning to sit with some of that discomfort of loneliness and to tolerate that feeling. I would say overall, if we try too hard sometimes to get rid of it, and to pretend it's not there, it can actually come back in fuller force, and we can feel it with more potency. And to really individualize it with the students I work with, to notice what helps you to stave off and to manage some of those feelings. Being around more people doesn't always do the trick. And so it's really important for the counselors here, I know, to find what works for each individual student. Finding something that's purposeful and meaningful, whether that be your job or academics or doing something creative during these winter months, picking up that instrument, pulling out that easel and those paints and the charcoal and getting at it with some creative stuff, writing, journaling. I think all of that can really help. And for the students who feel like they have endless days that are just kind of bleeding into one another, and it can feel, isolating and lonely, to really try to get on a routine. And also to hold on to the idea that this too shall pass, and we'll all band together and get through the winter. And then the spring will come, and hopefully some of this will shift, both in terms of the COVID, but just our ability to get outside and to be more connected. And I think I have one more. So connect with others. This is part of what we do for the RAs and the training that we do with different departments. And I think Dana and Gretchen spoke very nicely to this. Really to kind of pick your head up and look around, and notice your peers, notice what's going on in the community. If you're feeling lonely, chances are the person next to you is feeling lonely too. And so to step outside the comfort zone, to genuinely ask, how people are doing, and don't just settle for "I'm fine." I think that you know we're guilty of giving that line sometimes to people when they ask us, and certainly you know students can kind of just shrug it off and say I'm good when they're really not. So really staying with them and listening deeply, showing that you care. I think you know taking time with people is really an important piece. Sometimes we're so darn busy. And so what I heard from Gretchen and Dana that they really do pay attention and they take their time to check in with their residents and the students around them. And certainly that's what we offer at CAPS. Many of our students that we work with on a weekly basis, doing those individual hour sessions or half-hour sessions, and really getting into the thick of some of their concerns and what they want to work on. You know, you don't always have to fix it. You don't always have to find a solution. Sometimes just knowing that people are struggling through similar things and there's somebody there to listen and care can make all the difference. And, you know, extend the invite. And I had to modify this slide a little bit because of the landscape of COVID. And so a lot of the meetings are happening on Zoom or WebEx or some other platform. You know, it may not be optimal. I think we would all prefer to meet in person, but it's really it's a positive thing and it's a tool that we have, and I'm very grateful for it. I think that maybe even you know a decade ago or 15 years ago, we wouldn't have these tools in place, and there would be probably a more intense feeling of loneliness and disconnection happening at the time. So those are some ideas. As Res Life put up their slides, I realized that I didn't put a contact slide in there. So I can probably type that in somewhere, right, Jess, on the Q&A or chat?
Yep, you can put it right in the chat box.
Okay.
And you did get a question, so I'll go back on the slide. How can people get your services? So both groups, topical groups, and then I
Sure.
guess individual, you know, how would students access these different things you're offering?
Absolutely. So it's real easy. They can call the counseling center, 860-768-4482, or they can email me. My last name is Burda, so it's BURDA at hartford.edu. And what we'll do is we'll set up an appointment. We'll arrange and schedule a 15 to 30-minute phone screening. Once we do the phone screening, we'll make our recommendations. And oftentimes, like I had mentioned earlier, we'll recommend some CAP services, whether individual or group services, if they're appropriate. And students who are aware of these different groups, if they want to join, this happens where students are aware of group, they hear about them, and in the screening, they'll make that request to join a particular group. One particular group on this list, the Students of Color Support Group, that's happening in the evenings on Wednesday evenings, and it's actually happening this coming Friday as well. And that's a group that anyone could just join. And the advertisements went out through Residential Life. It's on our U notes, which is the kind of pamphlets or advertisements that go out weekly to the campus university. And so that's really just click and join.
Yeah, and everything that we're talking about, whether it be through some of the CAPS programming or you know different things we're offering, activities, should be in our campus calendar and then in
Yep.
emails. So a lot of it is on social media, you know, students following different Instagram groups, but also just going to the website and going to U Notes and seeing what's going on today is a really great place to start.
Absolutely.
Great. And Jeff, can you tell the audience what CAPS stands for?
Oh, yes. Counseling and Psychological Services. I thought it was a pretty cool acronym, and I thought it was unique to UHeart. I thought, how clever, until I became director and went to many directors meetings all across the country, and many services are called CAPS at the university. So that's us.
That's okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks.
All right. Sue, you're up for student engagement. And hold on, let me unmute you. There you go.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here with you this evening. I wanted to tell you some of the activities, most of them were covered by Res Life. But some of the activities that we do have planned, as the weather kind of gets colder and people don't want to be outside as much. So I got this information. This is my checklist from my folks in the office. So we'll do our annual Build Bear event, a Valentine's event. Continue to do lots of games virtually and also in person safely, like Pictionary and trivia. We're working with our club sports they haven't been practicing at all this fall, and we're starting to work with them to practice in small groups so that they can get out and do what they love doing best. Our annual fashion show will go on. We will reinvent spring weekend, which is in the spring, and it's usually warmer by then, although not always. So those are some of the things. We have 85 clubs and organizations that have learned to be extremely creative in putting on events for the students, both outside and inside, in smaller groups with safe distancing. I can go to the next slide. Isn't that a cute picture, by the way? And here's our hawk. So what we're doing right now actually is meeting with groups of students to get ideas from them about what they'd like to see done, because often we think we know what students want and it's not what they want at all. So we're doing that. We're also calling other schools to see what plans they have for the winter months. And then luckily we have the month of January when your students are home. We'll be in our offices working really hard to come up with programs for the entire spring semester. So I can go to the next slide. And so how do students learn about offerings? So they learn about them through, you've heard some of them. Hawk Talk is something the student government puts out on a weekly basis. Social media is great. All our organizations have social media presence, obviously, so students can get on board with that. Emails go out constantly when there's an event going on from mostly our students. The best thing, and we also have something called UHeart Hub, which is new, that highlights all the activities that the clubs and organizations are doing. Probably the best way to get the word out is word of mouth, and also through our terrific RAs who are always great about helping out with that. So we have a lot of planning to do. We have lots on our docket, but we're pretty excited about it. And yeah, I'll take questions if you have them.
Great. Good. Thank you.
You got it. You got it.
End of the day. Okay, going through all the comments. So we already kind of talked about different ways to find out what's going on. So UNotes, Talk, the campus calendar, social media. I'm just gonna mute you guys. Maybe it's me. How about how to reserve space, for example? So options on the res side, on the academic side, for if students want to meet in a small group or spend time together once it gets cold. What would you guys recommend?
Kind of talk on that. So the current program system that we have up on the University of Hartford is we use 25 Live. Your students can look for that, or again, I would recommend they reach out to their RAs about it. If they're trying to meet up for a specific project, I would recommend that they reach out to the professor. They might be able to help them reserve a space if they're not 100% sure how to use the program. Basically, you just go online. You can look up on the UHeart website 25 Live. There is a space where you can log in and you can see all the individual programs. You do have to go through a brief training. I do not know the exact length of the training. It kind of depends on how often you're looking to reserve rooms, what kind of spaces you're using. But that's currently the system that we use. Everything does need to be reserved. You can't just walk into a space and use it. It is just so we can know where, who is in the space. We can make sure there's proper ventilation. For any parents of Heart School students, this is an especially important thing. We do have practice rooms available that do need to be, reserved and used. So they will be using that 25 Live program as well. But there are spaces around campus that are available for any student to be using for projects, for meetings, so you can meet in a safe space that does allow for proper social distancing and ventilation.
Excellent. I just texted somebody to try to find out about the books question, which I think is Jill. Yeah, I didn't know that you didn't know the answer either, but we'll see if we can get it for you. Oh wow, you guys, Gretchen and Dana, you were also answering questions.
They're pros.
You guys killed it here.
You're putting me to shame. Here we go.
So question about head of athletics. The interim director is Maria Feely. Somebody asked that question. Oh, you said Matt. Okay, still scrolling.
Well, Matt is the associate director for compliance. So with those kinds of questions, usually he's the best person to go to, and he's wonderful. He's really good.
And Jill, you answered all the roommatey type questions. Wow. All right. Yeah, any other, I guess, from the group takeaways? Things that stick out, lessons learned. We've been doing this now for about 10 weeks, and any advice for students, families, just about staying engaged, not being lonely, feeling connected for the last few weeks and coming into the spring?
So the RAs had some wonderful things earlier they shared with me about ways they think campus is enhanced because of what we've experienced. So I thought that might be good for them to share.
Yeah, so I definitely think that being on campus this year is so amazing to just you walk outside the building and everyone's outside. There's people outside playing frisbee or just sitting outside talking. People bring their blankets out. And I think it's such a cool thing that you actually see people interacting and walking around outside, versus if pre-COVID, people are in their rooms, you don't really get to meet a whole lot of new people, but a lot of times I'm walking outside and I'm making new friends because people are always outside. So.
Absolutely. I have a really similar experience. I really enjoy being on campus this year. It's really wonderful to be able to still see people. I think especially this year more than others, where we're so excited just as college students to be able to see another college student, someone our age who's here for the same reason as we are. So I've really loved getting to see other people on campus interact. Something we've noticed is you can hear music all over campus. So sorry, I talk a lot about the Heart School. That's where I am. But the cool thing is now other people are able to hear what the Heart School does. We're not allowed to really practice indoors right now because of ventilation issues. Trying to make sure everything's properly ventilated. There are some groups that can practice indoors, but groups like large bands aren't allowed to, choirs aren't allowed to practice inside right now. So in the afternoons and sometimes in the morning, but usually in the afternoons, you can walk across campus and hear a choir singing. You can hear a band performing outside of the library. We have our jazz combos who just perform on a rotating basis so that they can still fulfill their performing requirements and everyone can enjoy it. I love watching students pull their friends over and be like, come here, come stand near us so we can listen to this music. It's a really wonderful thing to see. And it's something I hope will continue after this year. I love being able to share what I do with other people, and this is really the best way, I think. For us, it's not a good thing that it happened, but I think it's something definitely wonderful that's come out of it. So I hope that this continues, and I'm really encouraged for what the next semester is going to look like when we have a little bit even more planning to go into it. And I can't wait to keep seeing people around on campus.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, I feel like for us, we're always trying to find the silver lining in all this. And I was talking to, one of my colleagues, Dr. Nikki Hill, who runs a group on Fridays, and I asked her, what's the limit of the students that we could put in the group? What's the cap that we're going to put on it? Because obviously, in the past, we would have all these groups and we'd have to reserve rooms and set up chairs and have a certain amount of space. And so what's been pretty cool is that sky's the limit really with some of these groups, that we can just include and invite as many people as we want to. And I feel like partly because of COVID and our that we had to adapt out of necessity, that we're interacting and reaching other departments across campus that we wouldn't have otherwise. And again, partly because of the time it would take and the resources you would need to coordinate these different meetings. In some ways, it's just great to be able to, set up a Zoom, point and click, and then just talk to different people across the campus. So, yeah, that's been good.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
I just want to say that your students are rock stars. I mean, their whole world has been turned upside down, and they still are doing it. They're going to their classes, whether in person or online. They're making friends. They're coming up with incredibly creative, fun events, to keep them occupied and busy. And I'm really proud of our students, really proud of your students. So thanks.
Well, thank you, everybody. I don't see any other questions coming in, but don't hesitate to reach out to any of us afterwards. If you think of something, I know that always happens. You don't think of it, when you're asked to think of it, but then you'll think about it later. So we'll have another parent hour next week. Now I can't remember the topic off the top of my head. Is that yours, Jill? That everything you need to know about moving out?
So all these questions that people are asking this week come next week, and we will go through them. And students will be getting an email hopefully tomorrow with a lot of information, and information will be going up this on the web as well. So it'll be about closing, also opening. So I know that we're getting a lot of questions about that, and very excited to share our plans.
Excellent. Sounds good. Well, thank you, panelists. Thank you, Gretchen and Dana, for taking the time also. And it's always nice to hear from students and sharing your experience. And thank you, parents, for coming. We really appreciate not talking to, one or two people or just to the video. So thanks for being engaged with us. And we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.